hip-hop and R&B, African, disco, oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Hi, this is McGooman Moving, box truck for rent, for all your light moving needs, anywhere within the Northeast Orange, Irvington Orange areas. $50 a trip from Monday through Thursday, $60 from Friday through Sunday. Call 862-279-9300. That's 862-279-9300.
Oliver Samuels here, and I just want to invite you to come out to the People Profile Awards Sunday, June 18, 2017 at the Bailey Hall right up there in Fort Lauderdale. Guess what? Me will be the recipient of the prestigious Lifetime Awards. Don't take out one syllable of the meaning of the word prestigious. It's a black tie affair. Nothing less. Yellow Man get it last year, and that is a great achievement. No never be the recipient. I'm taking it to another level.
I was showing you before.
Chambers Entertainment in association with H&M.
This is the only option that I get.
Proudly present Mother's Day dinner and concert. A tribute to all mothers. On the 14th of May, the club gon' be Club Eclipse. That's 247 Fabian Place, Newark, New Jersey. Y'all know what that is.
Yeah, it only comes up on your phone.
Your soul provider, and the big man himself, my daddy, Ken Booth. So all them ladies, them danger babies, just come out early
and go to my page.
Your mommy, bring out your mommy, and all them road boys, bring out your mommy. Remember, admission is only party and at the gate more. So remember, music provided by Unity, DJ Quinto, DJ Jason, DJ Hurl, MC Gren, and Lady D. So remember, come on early, New Jersey, to all of my ladies, my dainty babies. Thank you, Mom, to it's a special night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's Mama special night.
It's only on a touch screen. I don't know why.
Club Eclipse, fortune of me, Mother's Day. Oh, Ghost and Good.
There's a button that says invite all though, right? They don't make it that easy for you.
Know what I am doing? Downloading the Western Union app. I need to send money to my auntie in Nigeria. Know what I am doing now? Checking today's exchange rate to Nigeria on the Western Union app.
This is who?
Now I'm sending my auntie money to help her with the groceries.
Download the Western Union app today. Use it to check today's exchange rate and send money to loved ones in Nigeria. Western Union, moving money for better.
Western Union makes money from currency exchange. Carefully compare fees and exchange rates, which may vary and are subject to change. NMLS number 906983.
For the most authentic Caribbean food in town.
Let me check it out.
Sunsplash Caribbean Bakery and Restaurant. They got natural organic juice bar that'll get your day started right. Like the Power Punch, the Vegan Juice, the Mega Green, roots like the Immortal and the Resurrection. Peep this, they have an extended bakery department that whips up my favorite, the hot Hardo breads. White or wheat, that's your choice.
If you're feeling hungry, just grab a bite. Sunsplash Bakery food is right. Jamaican party, Italian veggies. Sunsplash Bakery food is right. Mix the deal up with the cornmeal porridge.
Serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They also cater to vegans and vegetarians with the Ital stew and the Ital aki, the soul jerk salmon and mango tilapia. And of course, they got the usual curry goat, oxtail, brown stew chicken, jerk chicken, and so much more. I mean, their menu is extended and they're highly rated. Your best bet is to just stop by or give them a call. They're open Monday through Wednesday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're located at 56 Main Street in Orange, New Jersey, and can be reached at 973-395-3777.
So this is where I'm just going forward. I sent out all the invites. This is much easier. And then after this, we'll have to go back and then share it again.
Let your food be a medicine. Eat well, live longer. I'm David Shepard, and I endorse this commercial.
You wanna answer that, don't you? I bet it's killing you, seeing that soft glue just inches away. Hey, someone wants to tell you something, or maybe ask you something.
Ah, come on, answer it already. Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner thoughts. Don't text and drive. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Council and your friends here at Splash Radio.
Splash Radio, 94.3, New Jersey, Rich.
Well, you don't know, so Mr. J represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We just splash out the music on them.
Initialize sequence now.
Him. Your attention, please. This is no ordinary show. Covering news and information for Essex County, New Jersey, and beyond. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Broadcasting from 94.3 Splash Radio. Now, here's your host, giving it to you like only he can. Dawson.
Hey, this is Eric Dawson, and this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. Calling number 973-457-8000. Again, 973-457-8000. If you're listening through your mobile devices, 213-493-0287. And you can always check us out. We're streaming live on Facebook from 10 to 12 every day. And today is Tuesday, so we'll be talking education. And I'm here with my co-host, former chairman of the Newark Board of Education, Rashon Hasan. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. Good morning. Good morning.
So a lot of stuff going on, man. Yesterday we ended, the show with Kevin Jenkins talking about accountability, talking about, what transpired in terms of the reorganization on the board. Marquise Lewis being president of the Newark Board of Education. I'm still on this Reggie Bledsoe thing because I'm hopeful that he will make amends and apologize for misleading the people, and that he would ask for forgiveness from the community. But I want to ask you a question. As they begin to do the bios for the website for the board, who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for the content?
Well, the board members are actually requested to provide their bios to the Newark Public Schools District Administration, and there's a liaison, a board secretary, who's then responsible for getting that information put onto the website. So,
who verifies the information? So, if I won and I put and I handed my bio in, is there anybody who vets it to make sure that it's accurate?
Yeah. So, from based on my experience, there hasn't been a process to actually vet those bios, and I think that as board members, as elected officials who have taken an oath to protect the Newark Public Schools District and to serve the children and members of the community, I think there's a certain level of trust and expectation from board members that they will be honest and they would not falsify any documents that they would be providing to the board administration or to anyone else. Because if a person is lying on that document that's being placed out and put out in the public domain, in essence, you're falsifying a document, right? Whether it's your resume, if you're being untruthful about that, then to me that should be categorized as falsification of documents, especially when it's being put out there in the public domain. and that you as an individual have brought that information forward, right? You've said, and those individuals who've gone out and voted and supported for Mr. Bledsoe, I think that they deserve for him to make some kind of statement about it. I think as you continue to have this dialogue, the further along we get from the election, right? For me, I think it becomes a little more problematic that it just hasn't been addressed already. I think if I was in that position, the first thing I would want to do is address it. And I've seen some comments on Facebook that said, this is not Donald Trump. What's next? You're gonna start asking him for his tax returns. I actually read someone's comments about that, and
so they thought it was that it was unreasonable.
Yeah.
To ask him to be honest.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. That's what I. That's what I got from it. I think at the end of the day, I've always been kind of proud of the work that I've done, particularly as it comes to my educational background. As an African American, being born and raised in the city of Newark. For me, I've always prided myself. Anytime a person has said to me, wanted to get into engage in dialogue about my collegiate experience, I'm chomping at the bits for an opportunity to go and grab my degree and show it to a person, right? Because I'm just excited, not only that I've gone out and I've obtained it, right? I'm also excited that I've done it, and I've done it in spite of what the larger society says individuals like myself and others are unable to do because of our circumstances. So when I'm presented with that opportunity, you damn right.
Well, let me ask you, were you the first to graduate from college from your family?
Absolutely. I was the first college graduate, in my family. There were a few who stepped out there and made the attempt before I actually completed it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's like the pride and joy, because it's opened up the doors for so many other individuals who've come behind me. So for those of you who are listening and don't know, I graduated from Clark Atlanta University, which I believe is the baddest HBCU on the planet. And no disrespect to anybody else, but based off of my experience, it's really helped mold me into the man that I am today. And upon me graduating from Clark Atlanta University, my younger sister, who was a graduate of North Star High School here in Newark, she graduated from Clark Atlanta University. My cousin, Ronald Love, graduated from Malcolm X Shabazz. He then went on to graduate from Clark Atlanta University. And his younger sister, Raven Davis, who graduated from Team Academy, also went on and graduated from Clark Atlanta University. So by me taking that step, it showed the individuals around me, whether it was my family members or just individuals that I had relationships with, it showed them that African Americans can go out here and we can get it done just as good, or if not better, than anybody else on this planet. And I'm very proud to have gone out and accomplished that. So I think when you have an opportunity, I'm gonna say this, Reggie, if you have it, I would say, man, you take that opportunity to show the world, like, yeah, I stepped out there. I went out here and did something that a lot of people don't have the courage, don't have the skill set to go and do. I did it. I accomplished it. And by the way, young brothers, young sisters, you can go out here and you can get it too.
Right. But I'm going to say again, I know he doesn't have it. So, I mean, so we're going back and forth, and, I think I told you, he sent me an inbox and asked me to present my sources. And I told him, I said, the one place that you can go and look, Reggie, is the Montclair State University alumni page.
Mm-hmm.
Just go to that page, Reggie, because when you type in your name, it doesn't show a graduation date and it doesn't show a diploma earned. I mean, and I know a lot of people who graduated from Montclair State University, and when you go and type their names in, their name comes up, the year they graduated, and the degree they earned. So that was one of many sources that I had, and in fact that was the last source, because I didn't want to believe the people, and all of the people who told me were credible people. And in fact, one of the people who told me was a person who had a conversation with Reggie years ago about the fact that Reggie should go back and get his degree.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said, wait a minute, are you serious? He doesn't? They said, no, he doesn't. So then I started doing additional research because I didn't want to believe it. But at the point that I found it out and I brought it to his attention, my hope then and my hope now is that, he would just confess up and say, hey, look, like Kevin said yesterday, hey, I was wrong for doing that. I hope you guys would forgive me, and I hope that over the next 3 years as a board member, I can do good work, and I can earn your trust and respect and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right approach to take, you know, and that's what leadership requires, right? As leaders, you know, you'll be put in situations where you might not make the best decision, right? So the first step is, one, being able to accept that you've done something that was wrong, and then being able to apologize and make amends for it. I don't think you should sit in the corner. You should,
because there is no recall, right? We talked about that. You can't recall him. He won. But so the question now for me is about integrity, is about honesty, is about all those other things that we say we stand for, not only as board members, but as a community, as leaders in our community. So for all of the people who supported Reggie, all of the folks who donated money to his campaign, you know, all of the faith-based community that came out, all of the people who put their, you know, postage-size pictures on the mailer that went out bearing his face and the idea that he was a graduate from Montclair State University. All of those people, in my opinion, should be having a real intense conversation with Reggie, and they should feel some. I'm going to tell you, I would feel some sort of way about it had I gone out, put my name on that, and said, you know what, I'm going to ask people in the community to vote for Reggie because I believe in him. And then I find out that there was, you know, that there was a lie. I would say to Reggie, listen, that's damaging my name and reputation. But it says something too, Rashon, I think, when you have people in the community who just say, you know what, so what?
Well, I think there's another question that also has to be asked. How many of those individuals knew ahead of time? Because I can tell you, as a former candidate, right, and former board member, you should have a campaign manager or a member of your campaign team who's responsible for asking you some very tough and critical questions. Usually there's a questionnaire that you would have to fill out as a candidate, so that and then that questionnaire, you're basically asked some things about your past so that you can kind of give them information about yourself ahead of time, so that they can figure out, you know, how do we work through those particular issues? Are these things that would, you know, discredit you or damage your credibility if you were to run for office? So either that step was missed or that took place and individuals just felt that it was in their best interest to allow that information to be put out into the community, and that individuals, one, would probably not find out about it, and two, if they did find out about it, so what? You know, what are they going to do?
Well, I mean, I hope it all gets worked out. Now, you were talking about and I don't know the order in which you want to discuss some of these things. I sent you some links and you sent me some information. But you were talking about HBCUs and, you know, and your pride in the college you graduated from. I saw a headline in U.S. News. Donald Trump, during the campaign, talked about his desire to be supportive of HBCUs. And this headline, which came out a couple days ago, actually it came out today, says Trump underscores commitment to HBCUs despite signaling potential funding cuts. Right? So now everybody talked about the idea of him taking this picture with you know, with all of these presidents from these HBCUs before, and folks were a little annoyed that he did that. You know, they thought it was just a, you know, cheap photo op. But I think that, you know, that, well, my hope is that he does have an interest in being supportive, that he understands the value that HBCUs offer, that in a lot of cases, young men and women who otherwise might not be accepted into different colleges get an opportunity to have a college experience, get an opportunity to get a degree, and then finally get an opportunity to compete in this global economy.
Yeah. So I think what has to be understood when we speak about HBCUs is that for many African Americans, an HBCU is the first and only option So it's not a number two. It's not like, hey, if I don't get accepted to the Ivy Leagues, if I'm not accepted into a Harvard or a Yale, then I'm going to opt to, enroll into an HBCU.
And explain why it's the first and only option.
Because, if we talk about the history of HBCUs, they were established and they were created like many other programs and institutes that we have here that specifically benefit African Americans, because we were not allowed to enroll in majority institutions, right? Mm-hmm. And now they've grown to kind of be their own network of schools, and HBCUs, students who graduate from HBCUs can go out here and compete with those students that are also graduating from the Ivy Leagues. Mm-hmm. So there are some schools that HBCUs that have great reputations for developing and breeding some of the best leaders that we have in the world. When you talk about African Americans who are out here setting trends, who are out here pushing innovation, anything under the sun. And those things happen in HBCUs without the intervention of majority white institutions. So, for me, and I have this conversation in my household, my fiance and I, we both attended Clark Atlanta University. So we have that conversation. I'm of the mindset that my son, when it's time to have that conversation with him, I most certainly want him to follow our legacy and to also attend an HBCU. For me, as an African American male, it really helped shape my perspective of the world. I think the few things that we look for when we talk about public education, and then also in the collegiate space, there's some things that really stand out with the HBCU experience. One, I love the fact that we had small class sizes. So I wasn't at a majority institution where there were, 300, 500 kids sitting in the classroom where I got lost in the shuffle. The other thing was that I went to school with individuals who shared a similar background and upbringing that I had. We had there was an alignment culturally, even though individuals had different backgrounds in terms of the status that their families may have had in their various communities. So I went to an HBCU, and it wasn't an experience where I went to school with a bunch of individuals that were poor, right? There were individuals who were middle class. There were individuals who came from families that were wealthy. However, we all came to this institution because we wanted to get that black experience. Mm-hmm. And in that environment, I was exposed to individuals who are just out here moving and shaking in the world, and they are black. And I didn't really see a lot of that coming up in the community. It's not that they weren't here in Newark, but I don't think I saw that. I saw those individuals on such a large scale until I attended a HBCU, and I started to interact with that. At Clark Atlanta University, one of the professors in the business school, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, world-renowned author, he goes around, has a number of speaking engagements, and he is, a business guru. Mm-hmm. And we had that opportunity to interact and engage with this African-American man who is, I would say, I wouldn't call him a beast, I'll call him a planet. There's certain people within their industries that other folks just tend to gravitate towards you, right? And when you say something is so, it is. And he's one of those individuals. So again, to be around folks that we can consider to be planets, and to see that those people look like me. Mm-hmm. Those people have also had to deal with racial inequality and inequity, just like I've had to deal with them. People who've had to also have similar experiences, like being told that they can't excel, or statistics have stated that they're supposed to be dead or in jail. However, they've beat the odds, and they've still been able to compete, not just in their local environments, but to also step out of that space and to be considered amongst the best and brightest nationally and globally. Like, I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said about the HBCU experience. And by all means, continuing to produce great citizens, the White House needs to continue to invest in HBCUs, point blank, period. So I think, what President Trump is doing right now, he's not doing anything different than what the previous presidents have done. He just needs to continue to make sure, from my opinion, that those investments are made. When you look at those presidents who took that picture, one can say that some individuals should not have been in that space, et cetera, et cetera. But I will say that we can't judge one group of individuals in one light. So for those NFL players who opted to not go to the White House and take the photos with the president, New England Patriots, yada yada yada, we see a pattern of those things. So Tom Brady, he didn't go when President Obama was in office, right? Very little ridicule. But when we see members of the African American community take advantage of those kind of opportunities, I always want to remind people that if you are not at the table, you are on the menu.
Right.
So I think that was an opportunity for presidents of the HBCUs to be in that space, to show unity, strength, and numbers. And then also keeping in mind that that visit was something that was in parallel to a letter that was a memo that came from the United Negro College Fund and Dr. Michael Lomax with a list of recommendations that the White House and President Trump should follow in efforts to continue to support HBCUs as we move forward. And one of the things that was highlighted was, ensuring that additional funding went towards Pell Grants and those types of things, because HBCUs are a little different in terms of how some of them are funded. So some of them are private institutions, so they don't receive that public funding, from states. And some of them fall under the umbrella, there's some that fall under the umbrella of the United Methodist Church, right? So again, the funding is a lot different. HBCUs need to have strong alumni networks, and we also need to ensure that we have individuals that are constantly giving and supporting the institution. I don't care if it's $5 or if it's $500, whatever we can get, we need it, because in essence, we're the individuals who are going to continue to fund that engine that's going to be around to educate our future children, future leaders of the community and of this nation.
Well, here's the statement that the administration put out that put into question his intent to hold true on his promise to be supportive of the HBCUs. It says, my administration shall treat provisions that allocate benefits on the basis of race, ethnicity, and gender, e.g. Division B under the heading Minority Business Development, Division C, Section 8016. I'm sorry, this is all pretty technical. I'll post it on my page though, but it goes through all of that, departmental management salaries, expenses, school improvement programs, and historically black colleges and university capital financing program account. And then there's a little more legalese stuff in here, but then it finishes off by saying that they will work in a manner that is consistent with the requirement to afford equal protection under the laws under the Due Process Clause of the Constitution's Fifth Amendment. So I think that what people were concerned about was whether or not the allocation, because some of the money that he was talking about was for infrastructure, right, for these HBCUs. And so now where you come to question whether or not the money constitutionally can be allocated if we're dealing with it based on race, ethnicity, gender, and those other kinds of things, whether it would be constitutionally correct to do so.
Yeah, so I think that this is where the administration would be trying to take the label of HBCUs, the title HBCUs. Many folks, you hear HBCU, I think people believe that if you're non-black, if you're not black or brown, you won't get accepted into an HBCU. And that's the furthest from the truth. When I attended Clark Atlanta University, there were a number of non-African American students. So we had individuals there were actually some Caucasian. I remember we had, a guy that was white that played on the football team at one point in time while I was there. So I don't think that that will really hold up, because HBCUs don't discriminate, right? I think the fact of the matter is you don't have other ethnic groups that are, lining up in droves to submit applications to attend HBCUs. And there's nothing in any policy or guideline that will restrict an HBCU from admitting a non-black student into their school. Because that in and of itself would institute a form of racism and inequality when it comes to admissions policies and guidelines.
Got it.
Right. So I think that right there in and of itself, while that's listed there, the reality is HBCUs do not have policies that state we will only accept
that they're only black colleges. That they're black colleges. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the statement that the president put out yesterday. He said, the statement that accompanied my signing of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2017 set forth my intention to spend the funds it appropriates, including the funds for historically black colleges and universities, consistently with my responsibility under the Constitution. Trump said Sunday, it does not affect my unwavering support for HBCUs and their critical educational missions.
So, I mean, the statement, I think, is very political in the sense that it does not specifically state, it doesn't give an amount, right? It doesn't say, as the President of the United States of America, I will continue to support HBCUs by providing X amount of dollars in funding, right? So we don't have a bold commitment to say this is what we're gonna spend for HBCUs as we move forward. And you know, I think that response that we got was a boiler template response that we would have gotten from any other elected official in that space, because oftentimes they don't make those kind of commitments that tie their hands. Because if something changes, and let's say he had to reduce funding, even if it's by $500,
right?
Guess what? We're gonna flip our lids because that's not what you agreed to. You've now broken the social contract that you've made between your office, your administration, and HBCUs. But I think we have to continue to make sure that we do whatever we can to drive that accountability, and that requires having those ongoing conversations and discussions. Because again, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Right. And so I think it's very important for organizations, individuals who represent HBCUs, our presidents, organizations such as the United Negro College Fund. They have to be at the forefront of this dialogue that's taking place right now. And I would also add that I think this administration has a misconception about HBCUs in the sense that they believe that this is just kind of like a school choice matter. Like HBCUs kind of were created as a school choice reform. That's how they see the existence of HBCUs, right? They don't kind of see them as institutions that were founded as in response to the systematic racism that we've experienced here in the United States of America. And we also know that the administration has been very supportive of school choice programs, particularly in the public education space, mainly K through 12. So if they see HBCUs in their mind as an extension of school choice going beyond the K-12 spectrum, then hopefully that allows them to still make some alignment in terms of how they invest in HBCUs. So while there may be a disconnect in terms of how the HBCUs were established and founded, they see it as school choice. School choice for this administration, they've clearly shown that this is an area that they intend to continue to support, and they will continue to increase the amount of funds they invest towards those kinds of initiatives. So when I analyze this thing, I say, okay, I don't agree with you in terms of how you see the founding of HBCUs, but I know when you say school choice, Donald Trump or Betsy DeVos, that means you like it and you want to make sure that it's still there according to what I've heard from your administration regarding education reforms and what you will support.
Okay.
And you've seen it in the numbers. If you look at their budget, there's been an increase in the amount of money that they've put towards charter schools and other school choice programs and initiatives. So if school choice and programs mean that you're willing to put more money and continue to invest in those things, then label our HBCUs as school choice initiatives for the sake of that alignment with your fiscal budget, because we definitely want that money and we need money to help support our infrastructures. The other piece I would add to that is if you are an alum of an HBCU, this conversation that we're having right now really paints a clear picture of what we need to be doing to protect and support our own. You know, while we we welcome that support that we can get from the White House. At the end of the day, we should never allow ourselves to be in a position where if something happens and for whatever reason their agenda is not aligned with ours, we should not allow that to cause us to not be able to fund our own schools. And that's why it's very important for us as alums of HBCUs to make sure that we're giving whatever it is that we can do. We should make sure that we try to make a contribution to our alma maters and give back as much as we can so that we can help build endowments, we can help make investments in our own infrastructure so that we're not so dependent on, outside entities.
Right. So listen, speaking of money going to colleges, and I agree with you. Folks should, and I don't know how aggressively HBCUs push to alum to donate. I do know that my kids, not so much USC, which is the college my oldest daughter went to, but University of Pennsylvania. Man, I get emails, I get phone calls, I get text messages, give. And they just keep going. I can't tell you that I've gotten a single phone call or an email from USC regarding giving to them. But I do get it from University of Pennsylvania. And I don't know how aggressive the HBCUs are at pushing out that kind of content to their alumni to get these much needed funds, but they need to be aggressive.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So here's another headline. Speaking of money going to colleges, it says New Jersey college loses $1.25 million for not. And I had to reread that, and you had to correct me on what I was thinking, right? Because I'm like, I thought it was a typo, not double spacing grant applications.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh? And you go, Eric, that's when you put a double space in a Word document. I'm like, are you serious? So NJIT, because they did not follow the rules, right, are subject to lose $1.25 million in grant money.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? And the reason this is interesting, I find this is serious, but at the same time, when you read the headline, it's a little comical because when you are attending a college or a university, whenever you submit a paper, it has to be double spaced.
Right.
Right. So to hear that the college itself is losing $1.25 million for not double spacing a grant application that it submitted, and I'm probably sure, I'm willing to bet my last dollar that double spacing when their students submit their papers is a requirement at the institution. It's a little comical, but it has a deep impact,
a profound one, man. It's since 1999, the New Jersey Institute of Technology has offered a college prep program for low-income high school students from Newark, who hope to become the first in their families to attend college.
And it's very important for us to always sweat the small stuff. I remember we had an incident like this a few years ago under Governor Christie's administration, where the state of New Jersey lost some funding because of an error that his administration or his team made with the Race to the Top application. And that one was for millions of dollars. And that had an impact on funding here in the state of New Jersey. And again, this is another instance where students from the city of Newark will lose out on an opportunity. And this happens, and the only thing we can say with this one is it has to be a bit of incompetence. Not saying that the person did not have the ability, but actually failed to follow the guidelines that were put forward to them. And you've been doing this thing for 9 years. And I can tell you, if it's the same person who's been doing this thing for 9 years, maybe they didn't read the new guidelines that were submitted because they were used to going through this process for 9 years. But guess what? That's not an excuse. I think this person obviously needs to be held accountable for the actions that they've made in terms of not following those guidelines. And in addition to that, I would say for families in the city of Newark, individuals should be outraged about this right now. And this is something. So this
understand what
this hit May 5th.
This hit May 5th,
and I haven't heard anything,
not a word
about this,
not a peep. So except here on the Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Now, when we go and we continue our conversation about re-engineering education for our students in the city of Newark and urban communities, we're constantly having conversations about making sure that our students are college and career ready, and also providing them with additional opportunities. Now, think about the number of students who will not have access to this. Right. So if we go down, and this article advises that NJIT, they will not receive the $250,000 in annual funding that is anticipated to receive. So this is over the course of 5 years, and this is now forcing the university to cancel a 65 student program, right? So those are 65 students that we will not have in a position to attend this program. And the university is also going to have to eliminate a position at its Center for Pre-College Programs.
That's crazy, man. But listen, NJIT is not alone.
Mm-hmm.
It says dozens of colleges and organizations nationwide. A lot of them have failed to do that as well. So fill it out properly. So it can cost you not to follow rules and regulations, and apparently they're going to appeal it. I hope the appeal process is successful. But if it's not, we got to figure something else out. Got to have a plan B. What else? We had a lot of stuff, man. Oh, let's jump right to this. Headline: 99% of students handcuffed by Newark Police Department in public schools were black or Hispanic.
Yeah. So, we've been talking about this issue of student discipline for quite some time on the show, and these numbers are just alarming. And this is data that was published this Monday from the city of New York, and it says that in 2016 there were 262 child and crisis incidents where handcuffs were used, and this was reported in all but 3 of these incidents, or 259 of these incidents out of the 262 involved black or Latino children. It's unfortunate that this has become a culture that's accepted inside of schools. Understand that there are safety issues, and at times, there needs to be intervention. However, unless a student is in the school building and they are committing, a violent crime, I really don't see the need for us to have officers handcuffing children inside of schools. And the reason that I'm really adamantly opposed to this is because there are health issues. There's an impact to the students' mental well-being, the students' physical well-being, and as a parent, I would be very frustrated if I found out that my child was placed in handcuffs. It's just.
But it criminalizes our children, right? I mean, and like you said, it's a mentally, what does it do not only to that child, but to the other children who look like that child in that school? It says that we're criminals. Even as babies, we're criminals.
Yeah. So the other thing you want to add to that is, this is where these folks are getting their practice. They're getting their practice in terms of mistreating African American and Latino students, and what we see happening to our children in the communities is an extension of how they're treated inside of the schools in a lot of instances. All right, so it's acceptable for police to be in schools and to handcuff black and Latino students, and then we now see those things manifest into the community, right? Because those individuals who are also serving in the community, they're also police officers in the streets also, right? So it now breeds this culture, and there's some acceptance to a certain extent that African American and Latino students can be treated in this manner. The other piece is we continue to have this lack of cultural competency. We look at these disproportionate suspension rates among African American and Latino students. In my opinion, and there's data and research out here that also supports this, there is a correlation with the lack of diversity amongst the teaching staff and administrators who are leading these schools. So our black and brown children are now seen as they're now seen as the threat.
Right.
There's
You saw that other headline that I put up, right? There was a poll that was done. This is in World News and World Report.
Schools with mostly white teachers are not really trying to educate students of color.
That's what parents think by large numbers.
So, you know, you and I talk. I'm enrolled in this grad program now at Seton Hall University. I just had class this weekend. We spent the entire weekend talking about the 4 paradigms of ethics. So one is justice, one is care, the other one is critique, and then profession. So when we sit down and we start talking about justice, we spent a little time talking about this thing called blind justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's made blind justice is supposed to ensure that there is that justice is distributed equally, right? And the problem with that is when we start to look at the data, particularly in our schools, that could be the furthest thing from the truth, because we see the data which points to the disproportionate suspension rates among African American and Latino students. The other piece is this whole ethic of care. If, as school leaders, our responsibility is to act in the best interest of children, and in the state of New Jersey, students are, by right, based on the Constitution, they are to be afforded a thorough and efficient education. I'll go back to, again, the 45-day suspension for that student attending one of Newark's charter schools. How is keeping that student home for 45 days in the best interest of that student? What is that student missing out on? How is this student now going to come back and be reacclimated into that social environment after being suspended for 45 days, right?
Right.
And we're still not getting to the root cause of these issues that our children are having. Yes, we know that at times African American and Latino students, they can be, I would say, I don't want to even say aggressive. They're just different. We're different. As a black man, I'm different, period. The way I talk is different. The way I walk is different. That doesn't mean that I'm a threat. That just means that God gave me a different kind of swag. And if you can't understand that, then the actions that you might take when you're supposed to be protecting me, that it doesn't match up. And how can we allow individuals to be in our schools who are teaching our young African American and Latino students when they themselves have a fear of those individuals? And I've heard people all the time saying, oh, the teachers need training. Guess what? You can't train a person to not be fearful of someone else because of the color of their skin.
Right.
Those are learned behaviors, and individuals who've been taught those things for decades because of their upbringing and based off of their own personal experiences. And I think that anybody who believes that someone can go into a school and do what's in the best interest of a student who's black or brown, when that teacher, that administrator, whomever, does not see that person as an equal, and that individual sees that student as a threat, there's no way in hell that person is going to do what's in the best interest of their child.
And I'm going to post all of these articles from U.S. News in a thread, but here was some research done, and it said approximately 100,000 black students who enrolled in 3rd grade in North Carolina's public schools were found to be at risk of dropping out, and it said that with them having access to at least one black teacher, that dropout rate decreased by 29%. By 29%, simply by having one black teacher.
Yeah. And that's really important. There's also, the research also highlighted the fact that students who are suspended just once, that increases the likelihood of that student dropping out of high school. Right? And you think about these alarming suspension rates that we're having. So again, we get back to that conversation about a school to prison pipeline.
Right.
If we're suspending students at such high rates, particularly African American and Latinos, and the research also suggests that by being suspended even once, that increases the likelihood or possibility of a student dropping out of high school. We know what happens. What happens when our young boys drop out of high school? We find them where? Out in the streets,
right,
out in the corners. They can't get jobs. Now they're involved in illegal activities, right? Illegal activities. They end up getting caught. They end up in jail. They end up serving time. So again, they find themselves as a part of that whole school to prison pipeline, and it starts with having sound policies that should be in place to help us protect these children. Every school district should make a hefty investment in restorative justice, and in my opinion, I would challenge all of our schools, particularly in urban communities, to disband your suspension policies and only allow students to serve those suspensions in the schools, or develop some kind of off-site center where students can go, right, receive some kind of therapy, to speak to a guidance counselor so that we can get to the root cause of those issues. And if there's an issue between one student and another that caused this incident, like maybe it's a fight as an example, we need to make sure that we have good resources to help these students understand the options they have when faced with those kind of situations. Every student should be learning the critical skills for conflict resolution, and we can't wait until our children are in high school. We need to be doing this kind of stuff at the ground level so that our students learn how to respect one another, see each other as brothers and sisters or comrades in the community, so that we can just get rid of these incidents. Because the more these incidents occur, now you have somebody on the other end pushing a policy to get our kids out of school. And the reason that I think that they suspend our students as much, because it's easier to send our young black and brown boys and girls home, as opposed to sitting down and trying to get to the root cause of the issues.
And especially if you're not dealing with black teachers, right? You've
Exactly.
got white teachers, so they're not identifying culturally. And so here's a quote by a student in the article that talks about the 99% of the students who are handcuffed in New York. It says, the student says, it's unfair, it's racist, right? It says, it's horrible we're still going through, this is a 15-year-old, says it's horrible that we're still going through these things or things like this with our people. So my question is, when you have a 15-year-old who says, I think this is racist, perspective, or what do they say, perception is reality, right? So whether or not you want to have policymakers say it's not racist, you got a 15-year-old who believes it's racist, right? And now you want that 15-year-old to go into school, into this environment that he or she believes is racist, and you want them to sit and you want them to learn, right? And there is no, you talked about therapy earlier for people who are suspended. There is no intervention for this 15-year-old kid where somebody says, well, why do you think it's racist? Let's have a conversation about that, because at the end of the day, we need you to come to school prepared to learn.
Yes.
Right? And if you're not coming to school prepared to learn, then the likelihood of you getting handcuffed again is greater.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, but we're not going to intervene, right? We're not going to step in and try to deal with your perception of what's going on. Even if we believe that it's not accurate, we're not going to deal with it. We're going to allow you to have that perception, and then we're going to force you to come into this racist environment, and then we're going to force you to sit down, and we're going to force you to learn against all the statistics that say if we change things, you have a better opportunity to succeed.
I agree with that, brother.
I mean, that's crazy, man. Now, Natasha Levant said that regarding the kid who got the 45-day suspension, he was picked up for shoplifting because he was hungry.
Wow.
Because being in school, see, this is the other thing that we don't talk about in our community. Right, but understand this. This is what we don't talk about in our communities, right? A lot of these kids go to school, and that's where they eat.
Yeah.
That's where they eat. That's where they get their breakfast. That's where they get their lunch, And so now when you take that kid out of school for 45 days,
now you got a hungry kid.
Now you got a hungry kid.
So now for any schools that are out here that are listening, a few years ago a program was launched. The first pilot was done out in Michigan. Then it was opened up in New Jersey. It's called the Community Eligibility Option Program. And what this program allows is for school districts that have a percentage of students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch. I forget what the threshold is. I think it's probably about 45%. Every year, the Department of Education makes up this list of schools who are eligible based off of their percentage of students who will receive free and reduced lunch. And what this program allows you to do is, if you meet that actual threshold, you can then provide free lunch, breakfast and lunch for the entire school, right? Because of this population of students that meet the threshold. And what they do is they reimburse the schools for what they put out, or what they pay towards the lunch. So Newark Public Schools is one of the districts that was enrolled in the program. It's something that I worked on with a fellow board member at the time, Danico Matthias, and we were actually able to roll that out, and the district did it as a pilot year, and they now have gone on to expand some of those programs. So when I hear things like, students, schools don't necessarily have those programs, or they're not providing that service to all of their students. Some of them are not aware. So for any school leaders or school employees who are listening, maybe this is something that you can talk to your principals or your school leaders about, to figure out if they're going to apply for this or if they're actually eligible for your school districts, because this makes a huge difference for our students. We're adults, right? I know if I was sitting here hungry right now, Eric, I'd probably ask you to go to a commercial break so I could go and get me a snack or something. Right. So we also have to keep in mind that our children are dealing with these same kind of issues in their communities, and it really helps us as it pertains to us connecting with our students and just having them in a position where they're fully prepared to receive the lessons that the educators are trying to deliver to them in the school environments.
And we have to be real advocates for them. We have to understand that what we see in the street is a direct correlation of the lack of effort that we put into making sure that those environments in those schools are adequate for our children to be in. I mean, they're already faced with enormous odds, even before they get there, right? Before they walk in the door. We talked about safe passages for the kids to get through schools, right? We talked, a couple of weeks ago, there were 7 people shot and 2 murdered, and I think another person was murdered yesterday, and more shootings, helicopters flying over homes. So the kids literally living in a war zone, and they have to walk through that war zone to get to school. And then even when they get to school, it's not a place of comfort, right? And learning for most of them. You have these kids who feel like we're talking about now. It's a racist environment, that the people don't look like them, they don't identify with them culturally, and they're ready to suspend them for 45 days, as opposed to trying to figure out that maybe, like the person said about the kid who was suspended for 45 days, he's carrying that knife because adults didn't do the work that they needed to do to make sure that he could get to school safely, can sit in that chair, and that he could learn the way that he's supposed to.
So we had a comment in the thread states, when students are suspended for a long period of time, home instruction should be provided. And that is true, that home instruction should be provided to those students. But again, when you put a student in that position when they're being homeschooled or receiving home instruction, I think you also take away from another critical element, which is developing the social skills that the students need, and also the ability to focus on team building. And the reason that I mentioned those skills, Kevin Jenkins, when he and I were on last week, we discussed that report that was conducted of some countries, and they were surveyed parents and also administrators and policymakers in those countries to ask them what they felt were the most important critical skills for students to learn as we prepare them for a global market, and taking on that next phase of their lives, whether it's working or being in the college space. And some of the things they highlighted was really around communication skills and students' ability to develop socially, and also working well with others in that environment. So again, if you take a student out of school and you are giving them home instruction for 45 days, that's 180. You're talking about in the area, maybe like, depending on the length of the school year, whether it's a traditional public school or charter school, about 20% of the school year that student is actually going to miss, and they're not going to have opportunity to interact and develop their social skills.
So listen, we're going to take our 11 o'clock break. When we come back, we're going to talk about charters and magnets.
Current time, Flash Radio. 94.3 Reggae, Dance Hall, Soca, Hip Hop and R&B, African, Disco, Oldies but Goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
May 12th, the biggest tourist bash New Jersey has ever seen. Lux Entertainment brings to you New York meets New Jersey. Tourist State of Mind, Black and Gold Affair. The official birthday bash for Little Rihanna, DJ Tech, Ride the God, and out of New York, DJ Rich Rated R. Friday, May 12, 2017, 48 Branford Place, North New Jersey. Music powered by DJ Biggs, DJ Maul, DJ Chronic, DJ Rich, DJ Dark Kent, and straight from New York City, DJ Kev Rich and Prince Chills. Doors open at 10 p.m. There will be tight security. All you can drink and birthday packages are available. For more information, please log on to touriststateofmind.eventbrite.com. Again, that's touriststateofmind.eventbrite.com. May 12th, New York meets New Jersey. Tourist State of Mind, Black and Gold Affair. Be there.
Are you looking for real Jamaican cooking? Look no further than the real, authentic, and bona fide spot in Newark, New Jersey. Star's Pressure Pot Restaurant at 347 Sanford Avenue, serving the best curry goat, oxtail, steamed fish, jerk curry, fried, and brown stew chicken. Call today, 973-350-6657. There's always a special at Star's Pressure Pot Restaurant. Stew Beef Tuesdays, Stew Peas Wednesday, Cowfoot Thursdays, Seafood and Fish Fry Fridays, Saturdays it's Portland Jamaica Style Jerk. You name it. Star's Pressure Pot Restaurant is open every day, Monday to Thursday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday and Saturdays till 10 p.m. And check out early Sundays, noon to midnight, with all your favorite games. There's a live broadcast every Sunday at Star's Pressure Pot Restaurant with all your favorite DJs. Catering and delivery, call today, 973-350-6657, or check them on the web at starspressurepot.restaurant.com. It's always a good day at Star's Pressure Pot Restaurant. We know that when it comes to your vehicle maintenance, you've got a lot of options. In fact, with so many options, it can be challenging sometimes to find a reliable and affordable auto mechanic. But that's where we come in, Belmont Motor Works. With a commitment to providing our customers with honest, quality service at reasonable prices. Belmont Motor Works has one of the most modern, state-of-the-art automotive service and repair facility in the entire state of New Jersey. Our technology, education, and expertise will provide you with the best car care service imaginable. For an appointment, dial 973-268-8199. Right now, get a check engine light diagnostic, an oil change or tune-up, brakes, or just a performance upgrade. Belmont Motor Works got it covered. We're your one-stop shop, the European specialist, specializing in BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Range Rover, and all luxury and high-performance vehicles. 973-268-8199. We also install engines, transmissions, starters, alternators, timing belts, water pumps, and so much more. Trust the trusted Belmont Motor Works. Conveniently located at 531 Central Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. And find us on the web at www.belmontmotorworks.com.
Well, I don't know, so Mr. G represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We just splash out the music on them. Timing belts, water pumps, and so much more. The Eric Dawson Radio Show on 94.3 FM. Central Avenue in.
So this is Eric Dawson. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. There was another headline that I posted, which talked about charter schools and magnet schools, and how these charter schools and magnet schools are excelling across the country. But before we get into that discussion, what I want to do is ask two things. One, for you guys who are listening to the show, please take a second, hit share. That's always helpful. It gets the word out about the show, and folks are, become more informed, and hopefully through the discussion we can engage them, and then through the information they can be empowered to make a change in the community. Secondly, in the thread, and I asked the question because you showed it to me at the break, that Mimi Burgess said that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So I don't know if there's a specific question that wasn't answered, Mimi, but we're happy to try to answer it. The call-in number is 973-457-8000. Again, it's 973-457-8000. What we'd like not to happen is for you to listen to the show and not be edified at the end. All right, that wouldn't be a good thing for us to have happen. But on to these charters. And look, I want to say to you, I don't think charter schools are the end-all, be-all, right? But I do think some are doing it right. The ones who are not, they should be closed. Magnet schools, I think magnet schools have have a decent handle on how to manage things. But that headline, it caught my attention, and I want to bring it up.
Yeah. So charter schools will continue to grow. They're here. So for individuals who are, screaming to have the moratorium, especially here in the state of New Jersey, I think those individuals need to really take a step back and kind of look at what we're dealing with right now. So when we look at the national, the rankings of U.S. News 2017 Best High School Rankings, if you look at the state of New Jersey, the top high school in the city of Newark is a charter school, according to this study. And that's North Star Academy High School. And then we also have Arts High School that's listed there. I believe Technology is listed, and Science Park High School. So what we see is that our magnet schools are performing very well, which we've known. This has happened for years. We've known that magnet schools in urban communities like Newark are among some of the top performing high schools. Now you start to add charter schools in the mix, particularly when you look at the national rankings that was put in place. You see that the majority of those schools, when you talk about the top 20 to 25, are actually charter schools, and that right there says something. I think when you have charter schools in your community, I think what's very important is to make sure that the traditional public schools and charter schools are working together to develop strategies that can help move the entire educational system forward. I still believe to this day that this is a missed opportunity for the city of Newark, because we see pockets of this happening. We don't see it happening on a large scale. For me, if I was a school leader and leading a high school, and North Star Academy being ranked as the top high school in the city according to this ranking, I would be knocking on their door to try to figure out how we can put our heads together and how they can share some best practices with me, whether that's training or professional development for our educators. Not saying that everything that they do in their school is going to work or transcend into the other schools throughout the city, but at least provide yourself with an opportunity to extract those best practices, and then you as a school leader decide whether those best practices fit the model that you have in place at your schools. So the problem that I have, and I will continue to have around that conversation of moratoriums, is that having a moratorium, to me, like telling a school like North Star, we don't want you to expand after you've been ranked as the 24th performing high school in the state and the top performing high school in the city of Newark. To me, that's counterintuitive. I don't think that we should be engaged in those kind of conversations. I think those conversations should be more along the lines of how can we extract those best practices and also implement those things in different schools throughout the city so we can have more schools that are on that list. Magnet schools, I mean, they're doing great work, but I will also highlight the fact that magnet schools are already set apart from the traditional public schools that you have in the city, because students are required to test into those schools. So what that says to me is that you're already going to get the best and the brightest, because there's a benchmark or standard that has to be met in order for those students to even be considered.
So you've already
weeded
schools. Out the.
So you kind of you've already weeded out. And I went to a magnet school, or I didn't go to. I went to a county Votech school, North Tech. is where I graduated from, but I had to test into that school, right? And I remember I also applied to Arts High School, and I wasn't an artsy kid. I couldn't draw, I couldn't do any of that stuff, but I had a high school teacher who told me that I needed to go and I needed to apply to as many of the magnet schools as possible. And I didn't think that I would get into Arts High because the arts that just wasn't my strong suit, right? So again, to your point, Eric, yes, they kind of weed out those students who are already on the bottom end of that performance scale, and they end up with the best and brightest. So I don't expect anything less from our magnet schools.
So then we're talking, but again, we're talking about a culture within the school, right? So if you have kids of like mind, so they've all been weeded out or weeded through. You've had the kids who've had to test. So firstly, what you have in the magnet school are a combination of kids who want to learn and kids who come from homes that value education.
Yep.
Right? Because they're sending their kids to that magnet school.
Absolutely.
And so now when you have that combination of kids who want to learn and kids who come from a home of people who value education, how do you not expect there to be progress? I would almost guarantee you that on parent-teacher night and all those other kinds of things, you probably have a huge number of parents come out and participate.
Yeah, I think so. Right? I think you also can see, I live near Science High School, so I know Denise Crawford is a member of the parent-teacher organization over at the school, and I mean, she's on it. I think that's a difference.
I graduated in 81 from Science High.
Yeah.
And back then, you had high schools in Newark that, I mean, just quite frankly, I mean, it just seemed like people didn't give a damn. Folks didn't show up at events. Parents weren't available to show up to meet with teachers, to, intervene when their kids were not doing well. And I can't tell you, I mean, it was to an embarrassing degree, because I wasn't the best student, meaning in terms of my behavior, right? And, I suffered some growing pains. But my dad was the president of the Board of Education, and in a lot of cases, Mr. Petiti, who was the principal of Science at the time, took great pleasure in calling down to 2 Cedar Street and having the president of the Board of Education come down to deal with his son at 40 Rector Street, right? So, again, I took no pleasure in it when it occurred, but my dad, as busy as he was, and President of the Board of Education, my mom, they would come down, and you would see other parents engage when they called them to the school, whether it was a school performance or something. It was standing room only in the auditorium. I mean, they were engaged, and I think that you have to have that. When you have those components, then you can expect higher scores. When you don't have that parental engagement, when you don't have the child who's ready to learn, and when you don't have the culture within the school that is promoting learning. And sometimes that culture doesn't just happen, right? It is a result of parents and the community pressuring that school to move in a direction that provides that culture for children to learn.
Yeah, I think that has to be a huge part of our discussion moving forward as we talk about re-engineering our educational system. We get the feedback, we hear from principals, we hear from school leaders that parents aren't engaged, and I think we have to really kind of flip that and start to meet parents where they are. One tool that I think is amazing for teachers to use and for school leaders is called the Remind app, and the Remind app allows for teachers or whomever to create a unique classroom through this app. And through this app, they can send direct announcements and updates to teachers. They can, to parents. They can also share photos and upload pictures of what the children are doing during the course of the day. And again, that's a way to meet people where they are. So that's a level of engagement, in my opinion, that doesn't require a parent actually coming to the school, because what you're doing is you're sharing real-time information about what's happening with their kids, in the classroom, and they're able to see those things and kind of respond back to them. So I love when my phone goes off and I get that notification that my son's teacher just posted a photo or sent a message to me in the Remind app regarding the activities that my son's engaged in school.
All right. So here's a comment by Charles Love, who ran for the Board of Education this year. It says, according to the mayor, there are approximately 3,000 to 4,000 students who are walking the streets and not in school. If this hypothesis is correct, what is the corrective action plan to get those students back in school? It is my professional opinion that these students are not sent back to the schools that failed them in the first place. These students need a specialized school that caters to their special learning needs. Now, before you answer that, I want to say this. If there are 3,000 or 4,000 kids walking the streets, right, and you see a school board meeting with 5 people in it, do you understand? I'm saying, even if you got 10% of these parents saying, why the hell isn't my kid in school? Why the hell is my kid walking the street every day? That would be 300 to 400 parents who'd be packing board meetings. But the fact that you have 3,000 to 4,000 kids, students walking the streets, if that's the case, and the parents don't give a damn enough to go and bang down the doors and kick down the doors and try to figure this thing out. And here's something else. If that is true, I didn't hear a single board candidate talk about this during the board election. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, that's horrible.
So I have concerns with that. Just the statement in and of itself. We've heard this. I've heard this even when I was back on the board, but I've never received any specifics around this quote unquote population of students. Are these students overaged and underaccredited? Because again, Eric, if that's what we're talking about a population of individuals who've probably aged out of the system, and their parents can't force them to go back to school, right? Because these individuals are now adults. So I'm concerned that when that number gets put out there, there's not enough additional information that accompanies that. We don't know what age group these students fall into. I would like to hear some additional information about the schools that these particular students come from. Northern Newark Public Schools has some programs. They also have some initiatives with the Operation Youth Network and Rob Clark, who has a program in Newark that really focuses on business and technical skills for overaged and underaccredited students to kind of help them get through that transition. So I think in order for us to make that determination, there has to be a full audit conducted so that we can actually find out who these people are. Because just saying that we have 3,000 to 4,000 students out there, and we don't have the names of these students, that provides us with, in my opinion, very little information that can allow us to move forward. So we need to first conduct a full audit, and I think what we should be looking for in that audit is which students were enrolled in schools last year but have not, the district has not received any information or requests for these students to transfer to other schools. And that, I think, will give us just a general baseline to say, we had these students enrolled in our schools last year, however, we do not have them on our rolls and our records this year. And then from there, I would say, first step, we should be reporting this to the state. If we have students who are supposed to come back to our schools and aren't enrolled, once we hit that threshold of the number of days that the students have missed for school, we should then we should be going to the state so that we can report that we've had these students who should have been on our records. They haven't reported for school, because now that feeds into that whole chronic absenteeism piece. And there are policies in place that the districts are supposed to enforce, to report that to the state so that they can then intervene on behalf of the school districts to engage with those parents.
So one of the questions is whether the school district right now is adhering to whatever that policy is.
Absolutely.
But and we need to figure that out, right? So between now and next Tuesday, I'm going to make a call down, and we're going to find out whether or not, how the, policy-wise, how the district is handling this. Somebody in the thread said that SURF removed the truancy task force.
So we've seen over the last few years that's been dwindling down in terms of, we've lost those counselors, attendance counselors in the school. And I think, I will be honest with you, I think it was a failed policy that was put in place when Cammy Anderson was here, and that was to develop these student support teams to kind of help around these chronic absentee issues and focus on these students that might be exhibiting behaviors that...
So explain that a little bit, this student support team.
Yeah,
what was that?
Yeah, so these teams are supposed to consist of school leader, teachers, and maybe the guidance counselor or someone of that nature, a social worker for the particular school. And teachers can write referrals for these student support teams, right? If these students are, let's say, exhibiting behavior. So if a student's coming into the schools and they seem to be disconnected, or the teacher is noticing a pattern of lateness, or hey, I've noticed like the last 2 weeks this student's been absent. They've been absent on Tuesday, Wednesday. Like, they see these kind of behaviors. They're supposed to refer them to these support teams, and these support teams are supposed to engage in meetings with these students and then come up with corrective action plans. I can tell you from personal experience, this is why I say it's a failed process. My brother is a special needs student in Newark, and he was attending Cleveland Avenue School in Newark, and I had to sit in on a meeting with my mother. And as I heard these things that the teachers were saying, the first question I asked them was, well, if you knew these things or you identified these behaviors with my brother, why didn't you refer him to the school support team? And they kind of looked at me with big eyes like
you knew about
the student support team? And I was like, I'm a board member.
Wow.
And they looked, and then the conversation went on. I then started to poke into it, said, so what process are you using to refer students here? Because I see that somebody dropped the ball. Because from my understanding, the teacher should have already submitted a referral.
But see, that's that outside pressure that I'm saying. In order to get the school to do the things that it's supposed to do, sometimes it doesn't just work. We hope it does, but it's that outside pressure from folk who are knowledgeable, right, and concerned, that go in and start to demand that they do the things they're supposed to do. So Florence Swan says in the thread, parents have to feel they are welcome when visiting their child's school. Otherwise, they will not show up no matter how much food is served. Now, what I'll say is this, and I'm going to say this. My kids attended Westside High School. Not Westside High School. They attended school in Westfield. They attended school in Berkeley Heights. 2 terrific school districts. But I can't tell you the number of parents who went into the schools kicking and screaming, and they didn't necessarily want us there. They called us helicopter parents, right? Because we were always hovering over them. They didn't want us there. And so we didn't ask permission. And so what I would say to you, Florence, is this: that's your child. And to any parent who's listening, that's your child. And so for you to feel, listen, see, because, look, we go into places that we're not welcomed all the time based on, the level of interest we have, right? So, we'll kick down a door if we felt that somebody cheated us out of some money, right? We go back into that store. Even if that store owner doesn't want us in there, we're going to go back in there with our receipt and say, you cheated us out of some money. Why wouldn't you go in and say, you're cheating my child out of an education? Why would you have to wait to ask permission from those people before you can go in and say, you're cheating my child out of an education? And so I look at that and I become real concerned about it, especially, Florence, because, the parents are in greater numbers than the administrators, right? Because there are a lot of kids in those schools who are suffering from similar thing that your kid might be suffering from. And if you parents united through the PTA, PTO, right, you would be a force to be reckoned with. And not just unite there, but show up at the board meetings and raise hell. But because you don't do that, and you say as an individual, well, you know, the principal gave me an attitude, so I'm going to give up on my kid.
Yeah, but you know, so Eric, you and
I just can't accept that.
But you and I, we also identified this as an issue. I don't know if you recall that that panel discussion that I moderated last summer.
Oh yeah,
you
had a good time down there.
You Oscar James II and also Shavar Jeffrey served as panelists. And the focus of that panel discussion, this was during the I want to say the charter school parents first annual conference that they held last summer. And the focus of that session was primarily about how to increase parental involvement amongst males in the schools. And so I understand the point that's made when we talk about, you know, the schools not being as inviting. And one thing I will say is that if you don't see certain things happening into the school, I think we need to be very critical and start to ask those questions like, why isn't this happening? So we go into schools, and I think in welcoming environments, you will see posters of families, you know, on the wall. Not necessarily saying it's your family or families of those students who attend the school, but some pictures of families. One thing, you know, we look at schools that have low enrollment involvement with for the men. We walk into those environments and we see things that are not reflective of us and our children. So you might see posters that just show moms with the child and not necessarily see anything up in the school about dads with the children. We don't often see specialized events that are occurring that really kind of speaks to the involvement of the men coming out to schools. You know, we also see on the enrollment forms or the emergency contact forms, right? We had some conversation about this. We asked at that panel discussion, we asked the educators and school leaders when they list the emergency contacts, if they had the mother's information listed before the father's, right? And a lot of them said, yeah, we just do that because that's the way that it's always been done. And then the follow-up question was, well, if you're a teacher and you have to then call a parent or reach out to a guardian based off of that emergency contact form, do you default and just automatically call the first person that's listed on that form? And most of them said yes. So what we found was that just by default and by the way that those forms are put together, by default, when individuals are reaching out to guardians, they're reaching out to the moms because that's usually what's been listed on those applications. It'll have mother's information, father's information. And that's what we learned in that space. So just by individuals making small changes, right, and I'm specifically speaking to the level of engagement that we have with the men in the schools, maybe some teachers or school leaders switch up how that form is done, or even if you're a teacher, try to balance that out. You know, sometimes call the dad up. You know, when you need to send a message home, send something to the dad or the other guardian that's listed, and don't always default to that original person that's there. And then, you know, send information home to parents. Like, we want to know what's going on in the schools, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, we're always going to show up, but I think everybody to a certain degree wants to know what's happening in their schools. And we have to, again, figure out how we can meet family members where they are.
But here's the question I have. Newark has been doing it wrong forever, right? All the things that you're saying have been recycled over and over. Some of the things work so poorly that in 1995 the state had to come and take over.
Yep.
And then for 20 plus years, everybody clamored that they wanted to have local control back. And so here we are, after decade after decade after decade of failing that led to the state taking over. We're on the brink of local control, right? And I'm concerned because we haven't figured any of this out. 1. 2, I'm concerned because we haven't elected people who, to me, have the acumen to begin to try to figure it out. When you look at the people, when you look at a lot of the people who were on the Board of Education back then, a lot of them, the level of dedication and commitment to the community, to the school system, to education, was different than what you see here. What you see here are a lot of people who were trying to get a come up. Some people who were trying, I'm just being honest, and people who are politically affiliated and are being moved like pawns on a chessboard into pieces. And so now we're on the brink of local control. We got a guy who's ill prepared as president of the Board of Education. We've got a liar who is a board member, right? And we've got another person who was a third pick, right? And in fact, look, I just got to say it. They turned you down. They turned Charles Love down. They didn't consider a person like Deborah Terrell, who was a 2-time Blue Ribbon recipient and former assistant superintendent and interim superintendent. They didn't consider any of that. That's what we assembled on the Board of Education right now. And we haven't solved any of these problems. And I dare say that none of these people are capable of even thinking about how to solve them. Their brains just don't work like that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm telling you, I'm gonna try to sit down and have a personal meeting with Phil Murphy, and I'm gonna try to have a personal meeting with Wisniewski and with Jim Johnson, and I'm going to beg them that if any of them become governor, I'm gonna beg them that they hold back, that they show some restraint, and that they don't, give in to the political pressure of a few, because it's only a few, and that they look and say, you know what, Newark's not ready for local control.
Well, we had former councilman Ron Rice Jr. on the show about 2 weeks ago, and when asked, he gave his honest opinion and assessment, which is that no, he doesn't believe that we are ready to receive local control at this point in time. Everything that you said is very valid, brother, has merits, and I will say is true. But I think the other piece of this is, when you add this layer of political unrest into the mix of our public education system, that's another problem in and of itself. So you have this political monster that's just constantly hovering over the educational landscape. That's going to be another distraction for board members as they move forward, particularly for those that are there who are really trying to do the work and they're not trying to get caught up in the politics. I heard some of the comments. I was not at the reorganization meeting, but I heard the comments that were made. I read a quote that was from Leah Owens, who was very dissatisfied in the way things turned out. And her comments were like, Marquise didn't earn it. She was also upset with the fact that it was,
look,
that decision was done in back rooms in terms of, deciding who the next leaders would be. And then also the fact that there's very little diversity in terms of having a male and a female serving in those leadership capacities, et cetera, et cetera. What I say, the reason that I'm highlighting that right there is because if there's that kind of disconnect with the board, it's going to be very hard for them to move forward and do the work that needs to be done, because these are going to be unresolved issues that can likely go on through the remainder of Marquise's tenure as board president. And he's only one person, right? Which means he also needs the support of other individuals to get anything done. And if folks can't get past this piece right here of him serving in that role as board president, I can tell you now they're going to be in for a rough school year.
So I'm disappointed that much like the community came out and just kind of ran Cammie Anderson out of town, right? Protested and marched. I would suggest, I'm telling you guys, I would suggest that you do the exact same thing regarding Marquise Lewis. That you show up with, the posters that you need to show up with, and the loud noise that you need to show up with, and you need to show complete disapproval for what's going on now. And I'm going to tell you, because I know, I sat in meetings where some of the people who are embracing him right now publicly said that he was ill-equipped privately. They did that. The ones who said that he never showed up prepared at board meetings, never read his packet of information. People who said that they didn't want him on the ticket when they were running the Children First ticket because he was not qualified. And I am disheartened that none of you are standing up and saying that this is a travesty. So there's a headline, and I posted it, Rashon. I want to ask your opinion because you sat on this politically charged board as a board member and as the chairman. And this article actually came out back in 2015, but I think it's as relevant now as it was then. The headline says, as local control looms, Newark school board members say city jobs won't affect votes. So now you've got Josie Garcia, who is the legislative aide for a councilman. You've got Reggie Bledsoe, who is a legislative aide for a councilman. You've got Floecia, who was anointed by a politically charged group, PC2E. And then you've got Marquise Lewis, who now works for the Housing Authority, but was working in the mayor's office, but still is beholden to the mayor. And then we can go on and on. I mean, how do these people? How does do the residents of Newark actually believe that these board members are going to be independent in their thinking and voting?
Yeah, I think that anyone who believes that there's going to be independence in large parts, I think they are not being truthful with themselves. There's definitely going to be a correlation to the response that board members have and the actions that they take. It's hard to separate the two. I'm just being honest with you. You know, at the end of the day, if this hand is the hand that's feeding you, you know the saying, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And for individuals who, you know, don't have other options in terms of being able to take care of their families or being able to survive, that becomes very problematic. So from my opinion, I believe that it is a huge conflict of interest when you have an administration that's so closely tied and associated with the actions that take place or the actions that are kind of driving this this narrative or an agenda for the public education space, particularly in Newark right now. Now, that's just me. I don't see how an individual who works in the administration is also going to be able to maintain that independence, because again, those things are just so closely related to one another, and I think that's something that individuals in the community have to be aware of. When I served on the board, I made sure that I didn't work in Newark. I made sure that I didn't have any contracts with anybody. I didn't do business with any entities that were located in Newark. I worked for Verizon at the time. Not once, even though when I first started off, I was working in Freehold, so that was about an hour and a half drive for me to work daily in one direction. During that tenure, I never made an attempt to work in Newark and to do anything at that point in time, because I wanted to make sure that my professional life, what I was doing to earn an income, was in no shape or form associated to the work that I was doing while I was serving on the board. Because once you get into those positions, it's very difficult for you to get out of it, right? I'll also go back to the piece about being unprepared, and those individuals you said who have had conversations about Marquise Lewis in the past. I'm going to say to those people, if you're listening, shame on you. Because if you haven't stepped out, and I'm not saying you need to have those conversations in public, but if you haven't stepped up to have those conversations with him, to let him know that from your perspective you felt that he's been unprepared, or that you felt that he wasn't doing the best job that he could do in those positions, you have done nothing but cause harm. That's my opinion. And we've had this conversation even when we talked about people running for elected office. We have to be willing to have those difficult conversations with people. Doesn't matter if you say something that they might be offended by or hurts their feelings. If you're saying those things because you want them to improve and you want them to be better, because we all have a vested interest in his ability to govern the North Board of Education. I will tell you, for folks, I kind of stayed away from, I haven't put any comments or anything on Facebook, but Eric, I reached out to Marquise last week, and I had a conversation with him as a former board president. One, I let him know that, hey, it's very different now that you're in that position, because you've had the opportunity to kind of be critical of everybody else over the last few years. However, this is an opportunity for him to step up. We're dependent on him as a community to be the leader that we need to have on that board. So there's a couple of things that I think he needs to do. You don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel in terms of the governance and the structure. There's a lot of good things going on down there in North Public Schools. He has to make sure that he's looking at repairing those relationships that exist with the current board members, and that he's doing everything in his power to be prepared as he sits in that position. He's now going into his ninth year serving as a board member. When you sit in that seat and you hold that gavel as the president or the chairman of that board, it's a lot different than you just sitting in that seat. You have to not only be prepared as a board member, but you also have to go above and beyond that, because when things don't go right, it all falls on you. You can't now pass the buck and blame somebody else for the ills of the North Public School District, because you are now sitting there as the leader of that board, and you're going to be working in conjunction with the superintendent. And that's very big. That's huge. So I speak from a different perspective, because I remember being bashed when I stepped up to serve as the president of the Board of Education. And I know how difficult it could be to drown out that noise. You have individuals pulling you in multiple directions. That is not for the faint of hearts. I am in no way envious of him being in that role right now, because I don't think that I would want to be there, considering the political unrest that we see right now when we have these discussions and we talk about moving our public education system forward. And not being prepared for any board meeting is unacceptable, not just for the president of the Board of Education, but for any other member that's there. You have to take this thing seriously, even though it's an unpaid job. You have to go at this thing like it's your 9 to 5. You have to go after that thing and be prepared. There's no days off.
Right.
When the school year ends, because remember the board doesn't meet during the summer months. Guess what? As a board president, you don't get any time off. You need to be there. And your board colleagues don't get any time off either. That's the time where you're supposed to really dig in and start figuring how you're going to move this thing forward, and how you're going to stand up and make sure that our children are getting the best experience possible. Point blank, period.
Well, listen, I want to, and somebody inboxes to me, I'm going to try to take a break and see if we can quickly kind of read through this. I'm going to inbox this to you now.
Oh,
right?
I already watched the show, so I could tell you.
This thing you have?
I watched it.
Okay,
in its
entirety.
So,
all right. So what we're talking about, guys, is this
Netflix
show called 13 Reasons Why, and that it glorifies teen suicide. So we do mental health and wellness on the show. We talk about it. Suicide is on an uptick. I'm going to take a break then, and I'm going to try to read through this a little bit, and see if when I come back I can be a little more informed about exactly what it is, and then we'll spend the next 15 minutes talking about it.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back after this commercial.
You're listening to the Eric Dawson Radio Show on 94.3 FM.
Looking for trustworthy tax professionals? Give Impact Corp a call. We will assist you with all your tax needs. We are a team of CPAs and IRS enrolled agents. If you are audited, our audit protection team will represent you at no out-of-pocket costs. We provide 3 years audit protection and a year identity theft protection, so you can have peace of mind without fear of audit. Call our team of tax experts today, 973-395-4401.
You're listening to the Eric Dawson Radio Show on 94.3 FM.
All right, I did my little speed reading thing to try to get the gist of it. So apparently it's a Netflix movie or series about a young lady who committed suicide but sent letters.
Yeah, she in the Netflix series, what she did was she made 13 tapes that she recorded, and in each one of those tapes was about her interactions with one of the people that she says had an impact on her decision to commit suicide. And the premise was for each one of these people to listen to the tapes and then pass it on to the next person. So let's say if I was on that tape and I was tape number 1 and you were tape number 2, I would listen to these audio tapes. She also provided a map to help visualize, these events that she's describing, right? So we would go through it. I would listen to them. Once I've completed listening to the tapes, you're number 2. My responsibility is now to deliver the tapes to you as number 2, and then you for number 3, and so forth and so forth. And it's really interesting because there were obviously some issues that the student was having. We saw some inefficiencies on the behalf of a guidance counselor. We saw what some people would consider typical high school behavior. Then others would identify that stuff as bullying. It also involved some rape. And it was just fascinating that, in this story that this young woman didn't appear that she had the confidence or didn't feel like she had the attention of the individuals that were around her for her to actually have the conversations to let people know what she was struggling with. And I think as a parent, I would not let my child watch that series without me being by their side so that we can have some dialogue about it.
But do you think it's an important series to watch?
I definitely think it's an important series to watch. Very important to watch. I think anytime we start talking about bullying and students who are willing to take their lives, it's very important for us to have those critical conversations. So yes, I actually think that it would be good for schools to show this series to their students and to begin to have conversations or dialogue about this phenomenon and use this as somewhat of an intervention or preventive method. I think there's a lot of critiquing when you watch the series about how the staff at that school really conducted themselves and how they didn't know what was going on in their schools. The parents were really outraged and they felt like it was the school's fault that their daughter committed suicide, and the mother saw things in the bathroom. And these are things that people don't think of as bullying, but if you go into the bathroom and there are all of this foul language and inappropriate comments that are written on the walls, but kids go into these bathrooms every day and they're reading these comments, what kind of impact does it have on the children, right? And I think that's something that I'm not sure if school principals are going into the bathrooms on a daily basis or sending the custodial staff in there to repaint walls to make sure that you don't have that kind of language there. Again, you had the aspect of bullying and this sort of elitism that was very present and visible on that campus. And it was the students that were a little wealthier, some students that were a part of that in crowd, and then you also had this element of the athletes who did whatever it was that they wanted to do, right, with little to no consequence. And you had all of these other kids who were just kind of moving around and fitting in with it wherever they could fit in. So I thought it was very interesting, and I think it's a very important topic to discuss in our communities.
Well, do you think that it would behoove, because you have a lot of children raising themselves in our communities in particular, right? Parents are not paying attention to what they're looking at on their smartphone, so they could watch that series on their smartphone and the parent would never know, or on another device. Do you think it would behoove the community, the education community, to just look and say, you know what, we're going to take the power away from this, and we're going to try to head this thing off at the pass, and we'll host showings of it, right, in the school, and then we'll have a Q&A with the students about it.
Absolutely. But I also think that if we go back to that engagement piece with parental involvement.
Well, but we know that there's a lack of parental. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we know that there's a lack of parental involvement. Mm-hmm. We know that this film is out there. My understanding is I haven't seen it, but I'll watch it, and then next Tuesday we'll pick it up again a little bit, because then I'll have a perspective having seen it. But from everything that I've read and heard, and even listening to you saying I wouldn't let my son watch it without sitting with me so that I can engage him in discussion about things you can almost anticipate he's going to feel or have questions about. Mm-hmm. So if we leave these children to their own devices, well, we already see what happens in our community, right? So we understand that a lot of these kids are being left to their own device. So if they're in school, we know that this information, this video or this series is making its way around. People are talking about it. Why not take the sting out of it by having the school take the bull by its horns and say, you know what, we're going to use this as a teachable moment?
Yeah, I think it is a teachable moment. I think it should be viewed in the schools. I would take it a step further. If I was a school leader right now, after reviewing this, after watching this series, I would have immediately set up a meeting with my staff to discuss how we can engage our students. And I would have also sent the communication home to parents.
Well, that's the other thing, but we talk about that, right? Yeah. The district does not do that.
Whether it's a backpack letter or us sending an announcement out from the school's Facebook
For any of you
page.
guys who are watching this, who have children in the Newark school system, let me know. Or any other schools, Irvington, East Orange. We got some Bloomfield people here. We even got some folks from Chicago who are watching today. If you did get a letter from your district, please let us know that you got one. And then I'd be able to identify that. But I would almost wager that a letter didn't go home from the Newark School District.
And that brings me back to the conversations that we've had previously about the disconnect that we have in our schools, oftentimes with what's going on in our communities. As school leaders, whether you're you're down in central office or whether you're a principal, you have to have your fingers on the pulse of what's taking place socially, culturally, because those things spill over and they then become real life issues inside of your schools. Mm-hmm. Like, being a professional in the educational space does not stop when your school closes at the end of the day, right? That is an ongoing task. It's an ongoing responsibility. So you have to keep your fingers to the pulse of these kind of things so that you can get out front. And then, again, to your point, when it's a teachable moment, figure out what's the best vehicle for us to use to engage our students in this kind of dialogue. Because it's very often we find ourselves being reactive and not being proactive to these kind of things that are happening to our students. Now, God forbid something happened, right, to one of our students, we would then come around on the back end and try to do some kind of programming or try to use some kind of support. And this is a way, I think, to engage students and meet them where they are. If we know that this thing, that like viewing this Netflix series right now is something that's popular, all we need to do now is adjust our method of delivery to now meet the students where they are. And we can engage the students on a real life issue and get ahead of it so that we can, again, use this as a teachable moment to talk about some of the most important elements that came out of this particular movie or series, rather.
So here's Michelle, I don't know if you can call in, but I'd love you to call in for the next couple minutes and discuss this, since you've seen it, and get a woman's perspective. But Michelle says, so the call-in number is 973-457-8000 if you want to. She says, I watched it. My grown daughter and I discussed this. We both deal with younger folks in different arenas. So I'd like to know what that discussion was, I mean, to the degree that you might be willing to share it. And again, just get your perspective, since it was a young lady who is featured in this series, because I read a bunch of comments on a bunch of threads and articles that were written about it, and people seem to be quite disturbed.
Yeah, but so I don't want to spoil it for you. But one of the things that I would add in here that's very important is the trauma. When you look at there's trauma where a person is a direct victim of an incident, and then there's also trauma that's experienced when a person witnesses something. And those are two different dynamics. Oftentimes, we only provide the support to the person who's been the victim of one of these particular incidents.
Right.
We forget, even when we look at bullying that takes place in the schools, if you have a bully that's in the classroom or in the school and they're picking on other kids, it can be just as harmful to the student who witnesses that stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
As it is to the student who's the direct victim of it. So you'll see those two elements of bullying and the trauma, right? The direct victim, and then an individual who witnesses or observes those things happening. And again, when I step back, it causes me to then critique what it is that we're doing in our public education system. How are we supporting students, and not just a student who's the reported victim, but individuals who are also witnesses and are observing the things that are happening within the schools and within our communities, because those individuals need outlets to talk about these issues and what they've experienced as well.
So listen, with the last couple of minutes, I want to say this because this was very, very exciting to me. Natasha, at the reorganization board meeting, went and she broadcasted on Facebook Live. And I got to tell you, I think the viewership has reached somewhere around 1,400.
Good.
Right? I think that is phenomenal. But there's progress to be made. We do have commitments from different parents or people within the community to be a part of making sure that we have somebody down there to cover these Board of Education meetings so that we can get this information up, because it's critical. And so I'll continue to ask because I'm trying to enlist more people. I just bought some equipment to be able to do it in a more professional manner, right? A tripod, LED light, some external microphones so that people can hear the sound a little bit better, because we need to begin to take this seriously. And so we're not willing to make an investment. You guys make the time investment, I'll make the monetary investment and buy the equipment. And we get down there and we broadcast these so that the greater community can see what's going on. And I guarantee you, if we do this, guys, if we do it, you'll see a change on the Board of Education, because they won't operate with impunity anymore. They'll know that people are watching and commenting.
Yeah. So I think, again, that's a great way for us to go out and make this happen. And before we go, I just want to highlight one more thing, Eric, as we continue to provide the community with information. On May 5th, there was a article posted on NJ.com, and it's highlighting the fact that the city of Newark will be bonding $30 million for school improvements. And they're going to float $30.5 million worth of bonds on behalf of the school district so they can repair more than 60 of the aging buildings that we have. And this is one of the issues or concerns that we have, obviously, with improving our schools. And I want to just give a huge shout out to the school business administrator, Valerie Wilson, who's working right now to get this thing fully approved through the city council. It's already gone through one reading. I think there's another one that needs to occur later on this month.
Shoot that to me so I can post that in the thread. So
yeah, absolutely. And so when we talk about re-engineering our public education system, this has to be a part of the discussion. We cannot, I think it's foolish for us to believe that, sending our students into dilapidated facilities, buildings that don't have air conditioning, schools where they have roofs, leaks in the roofs, etc. our students are not going to go into these environments and thrive, period. So we should always keep our fingers to the pulse, and we'll keep you all updated as this continues to develop. And
you guys should keep us updated. You should show up at these hearings too and let us know what's going on.
Yep.
But for now, this is Eric.
And this is Rashon.
And we're out.
Peace.
This has been the Eric Dawson Radio Show.
So this is what I was...
Eric's opinion. It's about understanding what's really going on.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock a.m.
Just continuing to talk about what elected leadership is doing.
Flash Radio 94.3. Reggae,
actually, if you go to that link,
dance hall, soca,
with the city impact,
hip hop and R&B.
It's on the side of that.
African,
It says something about
disco,
bond.
oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Jingles Entertainment in association with H&M. Proud to present Mother's Day dinner and concert.
So $15.4 million is for fire system upgrades. And $15.4 million for fire upgrades and updates to boilers, chillers, and air conditioning systems. That's half of the fucking budget right there.
Your sole provider, and the big man himself, my daddy, Ken Booth. So all them ladies, them dainty babies, just come out early and support your mommy. Bring out your mommy. And all of them rude boys, just bring out your mommy. Remember, admission is only party and at the gate more. So remember, music provided by Unity, DJ Quento, DJ Jason, DJ Hurl, MC Gren, and Lady D. So remember, come out early, New Jersey.
Yo, what's up with this cat Ali?
Take your mom to